there's a lot we can do with meditation besides just relaxing, right? We're going to relax, don't worry. I know that's why most of you are here, but there's a lot you can do with it. So each week we try to cover something different, right? And this week is a continuation, a rare two-parter of our discussion last week on anxiety. And the reason that we do this 2 classes is because anxiety is a huge kind of push button issue. Is that a phrase? Like issue for people who are trying to meditate. So it's how I got into meditation, right? Magdalena, how are you? I'm doing great. I'm doing awesome. I was just thinking, like, I looked outside and it was light out, and I'm so used to it being dark when I do these streams that I was like, do I have the right day and time? I was like so confused, but I'm doing good. So that's our plan for today. We're going to continue talking about anxiety, and I'll kind of do a little quick recap of last week maybe this is better. I'll do a little quick recap of last week, since I know a lot of you probably weren't here. But if you want the full thing, you could go and watch the video. All my old videos are available. Sound good? So if you are new, definitely ask questions if you have them. That's kind of the advantage of this live stream format, as opposed to, like listening to a pre-recorded video that you can't ask questions to. So if you're like, I'm not really sure, that doesn't make sense to me, ask. You can type in the chat. I'll also put my email in the chat. I'll say it later in case, something comes up afterwards. You can always email me, always. All right. I'll respond as soon as I can. Usually I'll respond immediately unless I'm sleeping. All right. So before we start talking about anxiety again and how meditation can help us reduce anxiety and reduce our worries, right? I want to go over what is meditation, because this is probably, for many of you, your first time ever trying meditation, or even hearing a description of like what it actually does, right? So meditation is a technique that you can use to familiarize your mind with something, right? So as many of you know, I'm a world-class runner. That's a joke. That's a joke. I'm very bad at running. And so if I was going to run a race, like a 5K or something, it probably wouldn't go very well, right? Why? Not because I'm incapable of doing it, but because my body is not familiar with running, because I never do it, right? So if I wanted to run a race, I would need to train a little bit, right? Every time maybe every other day, I would go out and I would run around the block. And the first day, my muscles would be really sore and I'd be totally out of breath. But maybe like a couple weeks later, I'd be able to run a little further. My muscles would recover quicker, right? Because my mind and my body is becoming familiar with running, right? And so the same is true for all things, right? And especially things in our mind. Our mind can become familiar with feelings, right? Anxiety is a good one, right? We can become so familiar with anxiety that our mind goes there like that, right? Or so familiar with anger that our mind just gets angry so instantaneously, right? All because we're familiar with it, right? We practice it a lot. So here we want to practice good things, right? We want to practice how to relax, right? How to be calm. We want to practice how to deal skillfully with anxiety, practice gratitude, being kind, right? So these are all things that we can choose to familiarize our mind with. And over time, our mind will naturally go there easier. That's how meditation teaches you how to relax, right? Meditation isn't like, all right, I'm going to sit with my eyes closed and, oh my God, it's amazing. I'm so relaxed. No, it's training you to access this relaxation that you already have in you. It's training you to become familiar with peacefulness. That way your mind naturally goes there, even in times that would normally maybe upset you, right? So that's a long-winded way of saying meditation is familiarization. That's what we're doing here. We're familiarizing our mind, right? But before we can kind of really start to familiarize our mind well with things, we have to learn how to relax a little bit, because our mind is normally not relaxed. I don't know if you've noticed. It's normally thinking about a lot of things, right? A lot of worries, what happened earlier, what's coming up later. Our mind is all over the place, right? And when our mind is like that, kind of frenzied, right? It's hard for us to relax. It's hard for us to just kind of deal with the things that are coming at us. And maybe you notice you get angry at things that you normally wouldn't get angry about when your mind's already kind of anxious or upset, right? So the concept here is we want to relax our mind, right? So that's step one, learn how to relax our mind. And then we're going to use our relaxed mind to become familiar with something, right? It's like a two-step process to meditation. Relax your mind and then use that relaxed mind productively, right? We're not just going to relax and then forget about it. We want to use it. We're through all the trouble to make it relaxed, right? So the analogy I love using for this is if you imagine a still lake, very calm, very peaceful, right? You can see the reflection if you look at it, right? There's no rain or wind or anything, right? The reflection is very clear. The lake is very calm. If the wind picks up and starts to rain a little bit, well, that reflection might not be so clear, right? There's ripples in the water. If it really starts to downpour, you might not be able to see the reflection at all. This is like our mind. Our mind is normally like a still lake. Our mind is normally very calm, very peaceful, very cool and collected and reasonable, thinking objectively. And all of the worries, anxiety, stress that we experience, bombardment of thoughts that we experience throughout each day, they're like raindrops falling on the lake, and it's making it hard for us to see the reflection. It's making it hard for us to relax, to access our naturally still, peaceful mind, right? I like that analogy, so hopefully you do too. So our first step is to clear away some of those raindrops, right, that are making the lake not still. And the method we're going to use to do this is, its fancy name is single-pointed concentration, which just means focusing on one thing. All right, we're not multitasking. Our mind is super familiar with multitasking. We do it all day long. Even when we are not trying to, our mind is multitasking. It's like, hey, you're going to think about this now. Oh, remember what you have to do after work? Oh, remember that thing somebody said to you? Okay, let's focus on what I'm doing. Nope, not really. Let's think about something else, right? That's what our mind is doing all day long. And it's honestly mentally exhausting. That's why we're so spent at the end of the day. So we're going to intentionally, single-pointedly concentrate on something so much that all the other things that are normally bouncing around our head, all those other thoughts and stress, they're going to start to fade into the background a little bit. We're going to clear away some of these raindrops, so to speak, right? And the method we're going to use to do this is breathing meditation. You've probably heard of this, right? We're going to use our breath as our focal point. That's the thing we're going to focus on single-pointedly, right? Breathing meditation is really single-pointed concentration on your breath, right? Now, you've kind of experienced the phenomenon of single-pointed concentration before, I'm sure. If you've ever been in the zone at work or exercising, it happens a lot, right? Something kind of similar to what we're talking about. You're so focused on something at work that you don't hear all the noises of the office or the distractions of the sounds outside your apartment or anything like that. Maybe someone calls your name, you don't even notice, right? All those things that are normally super apparent, like trying to get our attention, they start to fade away when we're super in the zone, when we're super plugged in, single-pointedly on something. So we're going to do that intentionally now with our breath, all right? So we're going to do about a 5-minute breathing meditation just to kind of relax a little bit and kind of get your feet wet with what meditation, generally feels like, or, what you're, doing when we're meditating. And from an instructional standpoint, it's pretty simple, right? You're just going to focus on your breath, listen to what I'm saying. I'm going to guide it. That's my job. And then when you notice that your attention has moved away, it's no longer single pointedly focused on your breath, you're just going to be like, oh, not right now, and bring your attention back to focusing on your breath. That's it. That's the meditation. Okay? So let's get started with that. Like I said, it's going to be about 5 minutes. So if you're sitting in a chair like me, that's great. If you're sitting on a cushion or cross-legged on the floor, also fine. If you're laying down, also fine. Basically, everything's fine. You don't have to change anything about where you are as long as you are relatively comfortable. You don't have to be the most comfortable you've ever been. Well, we don't want you to be in pain. Otherwise, you're going to start to think about that pain and not about your breath, right? So make sure that you're feeling relatively comfortable. And then you can go ahead and close your eyes and just listen to what I'm saying and pay attention. We're going to do about a 5-minute breathing meditation. All right? Here we go. So whenever we start a meditation, the first thing we do is check in. So ask yourself, how am I feeling right now in this moment? Are you happy? Are you sad? Energetic? Tired? Whatever it is, it does not matter. All that matters is you begin to notice, begin to take note of what your mind is up to. This is called mindfulness. It's a word you've probably heard thrown around before. Mindfulness is the awareness of your own thoughts, moment to moment, so you can skillfully respond. So how are you feeling right now? And having checked in, you can now turn your full attention to your breathing in and out of your nose. Very gently, very naturally. You do not need to take big, deep breaths or forcefully exhale the air. Just breathe as you normally would in and out. And see if you can follow each breath in its entirety. Keep breathing in and out, very gently, very naturally. At some point, you may notice that your attention drifts. And maybe you're starting to think about something that happened earlier in the day. Maybe something coming up later after this class. Whenever you notice that this has happened, just gently guide your attention back to your breath. Back to breathing in and out. Back to focusing on how breathing feels as you inhale and exhale through your nose very gently, very naturally. Allow yourself to relax. You've earned it. Keep bringing your attention back to your breath whenever you notice that it has drifted. This process of focusing on your breath and bringing your attention back to your breath when it drifts is meditation. You are meditating right now. You are training your mind to focus, to relax, to access peacefulness. And you're doing it all on your own with nothing other than your breath. How wonderful. So just keep breathing in and out, gently and naturally for a little while longer. Okay, when you're ready, you can open your eyes. How'd that go? Maybe any first timers? That was your first time ever meditating? How did it go? Everybody has a different experience. The first time I meditate and many times thereafter. But if you found this to be challenging, it might not come as a big surprise, because how often have you tried doing this, right? We're talking about familiarity and how that plays a role in our body and our mind's ability to like naturally do things. Well, I don't know how often you're sitting quietly by yourself, only focusing on your breath, looking out for when your attention kind of drifts and bring it back. It's just not something that we do normally, right? And so by virtue of us not being familiar with it, it can sometimes be a little difficult, right? Nancy, it was lovely. Thank you. Nancy, always good to see you. So if you did find that to be a little challenging, that's normal, right? Totally normal. And something initially I was anxious, but at the end of it, I felt so peaceful. Shanta, that's amazing. That's incredible. So that experience that you've had is something that you should remember, right? Because you did that all on your own. I don't know, there's nothing special going on here, right? I'm just saying words, but you're focusing on your breath, and you went from feeling a little anxious to feeling more peaceful, right? So you have the ability to do that. It's empowering once you start to see that you have this ability. I just knocked something over. Susanna, feeling relaxed. All right, nice, awesome. So I'm glad you guys had a good experience. If you were like, man, that was tough, you're not alone. And something that's very common for new meditators is they feel that their mind is busier when they meditate, right? And a teacher long ago when I first started told me, and I will tell you, that you're just starting to notice how busy your mind is all day long, right? I was like, whoa, I don't want my mind to be that busy. I want to be able to be like, focus on my breath and be able to do it, right? So just takes training. This is just going to take a little time. But if you build a routine, just like training to run a race, like going slowly, eventually your muscles will get used to running. Eventually your mind is going to get used to focusing on one thing, and you're going to relax, right? Great. Any other questions on breathing meditation or meditation in general before I move on to our topic today, which again is a continuation of last week on anxiety? If you think about, if it's not a question pops up, just ask. It doesn't have to do with anything I'm talking about. It could be about something that happened earlier. All right. So just feel free to ask. Okay. So last week we talked about anxiety, right? And the thing that we focused on last week was learning how to identify when we're anxious early on in the process, right? Normally, this is the example that we use, right? Like if you think about a forest fire, right? At some point, that fire was just one little flame, right? And if you happened to be there, standing with a bucket of water or whatever, fire extinguisher, and you saw, hey, there's a flame there, then you just put it out and there'd be no forest fire, right? Because you caught it early. But if you weren't there, if you did not notice that flame, what happens? The fire spreads, right? And soon the forest is engulfed, and it becomes a lot more difficult to manage that type of a fire than one little flame, right? So the same is true with our emotions. And we're talking about anxiety, but this applies to all of our negative emotions, right? So if we don't catch ourselves in getting anxious early enough, right, then what happens is the fire spreads, the fire of anxiety spreads, and it starts to become a little difficult for us to kind of manage it, to break it, right? So that was what last week was all about, was learning about the steps our mind goes through when it becomes anxious, and how we can start to train ourselves to be able to identify when we're getting anxious a little earlier on, right? Usually right now it's just like, hey, I'm doing fine. I am not fine. I am not doing fine, right? It goes like that. So that was last week, and that's called recognition. It's a really important step in managing anxiety, and also in anything. Like if you can't recognize that you're having a problem, how can you solve it, right? So that's really important. And so now this week we're going to talk about, okay, I've recognized that I'm getting anxious. I caught it a little earlier than I normally do. What do? How do I not be anxious, right? How do I help myself relax a little bit when your mind is feeling anxious? And maybe you're sitting there like, I don't know, I'm not really an anxious person, right? Anxiety is just worries, right? It's worries about a future outcome. What's going to happen, right? We all do that. Definitely some people are impacted by anxiety more than others. I'm very heavily impacted by it. But we all experience that. So even if you don't identify with being someone who's generally anxious, I think you'll find that these are really good techniques for when you're, feeling a little worried about something, right? So there are really two steps we're going to talk about today, in terms of reducing anxiety. So last class was recognizing anxiety, and this class is reducing anxiety, right? So the two steps are, one, acceptance. I know everyone's like, oh, I don't like that word, right? So acceptance, and then space. And we'll talk about each of those, all right? First, we'll talk about acceptance. What's an interesting thing to think about? Anxiety is a form of anger, right? We don't really think about that. But when, anger, I like to define it as when things should be other than they are, right? When things should be different, right? Shouldn't be this way, right? That's how we feel about anxiety, right? When we're really in the throes of being worried or anxious, like, I shouldn't feel like this. Why am I feeling like this, right? So it's a form of almost like internal, like, anger, right? Which I just think is like an interesting thing to kind of throw out there, because we don't always make that connection. And they are very intimately related. And the opponent of anger is what? Patience. Patient acceptance, to be specific. There's that word, acceptance, right? And so patient acceptance is not just like, oh, I'll just, grit my teeth and deal with it, right? And it's not really acceptance. It's patient acceptance is when we're not actively trying to wish this away, right? And we talked about wishing away a lot last week. That was one of the last steps before we're kind of full blown anxious, when we feel super helpless. We're like we don't know how to handle it. We don't know why this is happening. I wish this would just go away, right? Probably said that a couple times, or at least internally. So when we're not trying to wish it away, right, we're kind of accepting what's going on. This is very difficult at first, right? and even not adverse, right? Because anxiety is really uncomfortable and we do not like feeling that way. We do not want to feel that way. But learning how to train in patient acceptance is really important, because when we're labeling our anxious feelings as like not okay, bad, right? It's making a mental link between this thing equals bad, right? And over time, what happens? We become really familiar with that link. I, talk about how I have kind of an anxiety phobia about itching, right? I'm so familiar with that anxiety that as soon as I feel an itch, I immediately go, oh no, right? Instantaneous. I don't even have to try, right? Because I have made that connection between itching equals bad and reinforced it through familiarity. Basically been training my mind to identify itching as bad, right? But for you, itching is probably just like not that big of a deal, right? So we need to start to break that chain a little bit by first learning acceptance, patient acceptance, right? That way we're not training our mind to associate negative feelings when certain external conditions are happening, right? So we want to recognize when we recognize early our anxiety, right? That was what we did last week. Then we're going to patiently accept that we're feeling anxious in this moment, or that we're starting to get anxious in this moment. And we're going to do this with as little judgment as possible, right? Because honestly, it's pretty normal to get anxious, right? We get worried about things a lot. It happens, right? So we don't need to really be too judgy about it. Kavitha, is acceptance just being okay with that uncomfortable physical sensation you get with anxiety? So yes and no. I mean, everybody experiences anxiety differently. Sometimes people have like a very visceral physical feeling. Sometimes people just kind of retreat a little bit. So the idea with patient acceptance is not to fake being okay, right? But to actually train your mind to not label this as a catastrophe, if that makes sense, right? And the way we're going to do that is we have to train our mind, right? We've been reinforcing our anxieties so much, becoming so familiar with this equals bad, this equals worrisome, right? That our mind naturally goes there. So it takes a little bit to kind of train our mind to go the other way. So the way that we're going to train our mind to do this, maybe this sounds a little, you're like, it sounds kind of dumb, but it works. Like when the next time you're noticing that you're getting anxious or having anxious thoughts, right? I want you to say, I am having anxious thoughts and that is okay. You don't have to say it out loud. Like, if you're sitting in a meeting or something and you're getting anxious, you don't need to say it out loud. Everyone's looking at you. Okay. Say it in your head. I am having anxious thoughts and that is okay, right? Even just saying it out loud helps. It's reinforcing the fact, it's training your mind to recognize this thing is okay, right? It's not a catastrophe, right? It's not a catastrophe, right? And if you want, you can even take it a step further, right? And this is really where we want to get. Instead of saying, I am having anxious thoughts and that's okay, my mind is experiencing anxious thoughts and that is okay. Right? So this is a step further in our training for patient acceptance. And what this is doing is really important. It's removing the I from this, right? Because what happens is we're like, I am having anxious thoughts. I am anxious. I am feeling anxious. I. What happens is we are starting to identify with being an anxious person. But you are not an anxious person. Your mind is experiencing anxiety. Sometimes a mind will get worried, right? And that's okay, right? Minds experience a lot of feelings. Anxiety is one of them, right? So saying my mind, again, not out loud, my mind is experiencing anxious thoughts and that's okay, is further breaking this kind of negative link that we've made between the thing that's getting us anxious and our anxiety, right? Does that like kind of make sense? If you're like, I don't know, it sounds like not necessary. I also thought that. I was a little resistant. And then I started practicing it, and like honestly, I just kind of felt better after a while. And I started to get to the point where when I would be having an anxious thought, like my mind would almost naturally be like, my mind's experiencing some anxious thoughts. Right? That was kind of cool. I didn't really start to I stopped like beating myself up about it, right? It's a good example. Let's say you're like, walking down the street and you feel a pain in your knee, right? Like, my knee hurts, right? You're not like, oh, I am so brittle. I can't walk anywhere without a pain. You're just like, that's weird. What's going on there? Body must be experiencing some weird pain, right? We don't like kind of immediately judge ourselves, but with our mind, sometimes we do, right? We really judge ourselves and identify with the way that we're feeling. We think that like at our core, we are super anxious. If you don't mind answering, did you deal with any physical sensations with your anxiety? Yes. So I had, well, since I was anxious about itching, that was a physical sensation that definitely bothers me. Sometimes I feel like a little lightheaded when I feel anxious. Everybody experiences something differently, but yes, totally. Anxiety can bring about physical sensations. And like honestly, that was like kind of what was happening with me with my itching is I would get so worked up and like anxious that I would like itch, right? It's like I wasn't like manifesting it a little bit. So yes, definitely dealt with that. And meditation actually helped me a ton with those physical sensations again, because when we're doing breathing meditation, what's happening? I'm not focusing on the physical sensations. I'm focusing on my breath. And then when my mind's like, nah, focus on itching, I'm like, no, I'm going to focus on my breath. And over time, start to get better at doing that. Shanta, it absolutely makes sense. I think it gives me the control over my mind. And Shanta, that's exactly what we're trying to do with meditation. We're trying to we want to dictate what our mind is focusing on. Right now, your mind is dictating what it wants to focus on. It's like, hey, think about that thing that somebody said to you that you didn't like. And you're like, okay, I'm gonna think about that. It's making me upset. I don't want to think about it, but I'm thinking about it, right? And it's like, oh, get worried about that project that's coming up later, right? Our mind is sort of in control, in the driver's seat. And so meditation is all about training ourselves to let us get back into the driver's seat, right? Cool. It makes a lot of sense. It is like putting your thoughts aside when they are bothering too much. Yeah. And so, that's an interesting way of it's a good way of thinking about it, because what we're not saying, I'm never going to think about you, right? To our anxiety, or if we're doing a breathing meditation and a worry comes up, we're not saying like never. We're just saying not right now, right? We're saying I'll get to you, but I will choose when I'm going to think about you, right? So very empowering, right? Very good. Good to see you, man. Thanks, dude. Okay, so that's acceptance, right? It's challenging for sure, right? Because we don't want to feel anxious. But the next time you catch yourself being anxious, step one is just say, my mind is experiencing anxious thoughts, and that's okay. Even if you don't feel okay, right? You just say that, right? You don't have to say it like 30 times. Just say it once or twice or something, right? We're just getting ourselves used to thinking that way. Okay. After that, so we recognize that we're getting anxious early on, hopefully. Right? Then we patiently accept that we're anxious. My mind is experiencing anxiety. That's okay, right? Now we want to create space, right? Acceptance sets us up for kind of like a counterattack on our anxiety. And the counterattack that we're going to use is creating space. Now, I'm talking about mental space, right? But we can use an example of physical space to kind of illustrate why mental space will work, right? So, an example I like to use is something that actually happened to me. My wife and I have spent some time in Montana, which I don't know if you've ever been to Montana in the United States, but it's very beautiful. And it's called Big Sky Country, right? Take a guess why. The sky is so big, you can see for miles and miles and miles. It's wild, right? It's crazy. I came from New York, where I can't see anything, right? So it's a total opposite of that, right? So one time, my wife and I were there. We're taking a little vacation, right? And we were sitting in these beautiful kind of high wheat grass fields, and we were looking at the mountain range miles and miles and miles off in the distance, and we saw very dark clouds over the mountain range, right? And we could see little flashes of light. It was lightning, right? We were witnessing a thunderstorm, right? It was blue skies by us, right? We look up, it's gorgeous, not a cloud in the sky. But over there, way off in the distance, over the mountains, it's a thunderstorm. And what was my wife and I's reaction? Whoa! That's awesome! Did you just see that? Did you see the flash of lightning? Right? We're like totally fascinated, enthralled, right? Interested in this thunderstorm. Thunderstorms are scary. Like, if you think about it, a bolt of electricity is flying down from the sky and nuking anything it hits, right? We're sitting there being like, whoa, that's so cool. I can't believe it, right? Over time, those clouds got a little closer to us, right? The wind started to pick up. The storm was heading our way. And it got to the point where the clouds were close enough that we were like, hey, we got to get inside. We're not safe out here in the open field, right? And so we went inside, right? So what happened, right? As the storm was further away, we looked at it with interest. It gets a little closer. We start to look at it with fear, right? So this is an example of how physical space can influence how we react to different situations, right? When the storm is over there, it's interesting and cool. When it's over here on ahead, not cool, right? Fearful, right? So this is why, I don't know if you ever think about this. I think about this, like why we give better advice to other people, to our friends, right? Than we give to ourselves. Because when our friend's having the problem, what's happening? The storm's on their head. It's over there. We're looking at it. It's off in the distance a little bit. And we're like, oh yeah, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I think maybe you should do this. Yeah, that's what I would do, right? We're super reasonable about it. But when it's our problem and the storm is over our own head, we're not as reasonable. We don't give ourselves that same advice, right? We panic, right? So this is an example of space and how space influences our reactions to things, right? So we used the example of physical space with the storm, but mental space works the same way. And you think about your friend, right? The example with, giving your friend advice. They're not super far away. They're not miles away. You're talking to them miles away. They're like right next to you, but mentally the thing is far away, right? So mental space is great for allowing us to look at our anxiety with interest instead of fear. Just like my wife and I were looking at the storm with interest instead of fear as it was further away. Does that make sense? Space, does it make sense? Space? I keep saying space. So how do we create space? Breathing meditation is a great way to create space. And that's what we're going to, that's what I suggest you start with. So we recognize our anxiety early on. We patiently accept that we're anxious, right? My mind is experiencing anxious thoughts, and that's okay. And then we want to create some space. Now, I don't know, maybe you don't always have time to do a breathing meditation or something like that, And by the way, I didn't mention it before, but you don't need to meditate very long to start to see benefits. So don't think you have to be like, oh, well, I got to dedicate an hour now. No, you do like a minute, right? As long as you're doing it habitually, routine, you're going to train your mind, right? But we might not have time to do that, or we're in a situation where we can't do that. That's fine. Even just practicing the patient acceptance part is really going to help us. And also sometimes creating physical space can help us, right? If we're have like a phobia of like a bug or something, if we walk away from the bug, then we feel better, right? So this is just good to remind us that space matters for us dealing with situations, right? So that's our method, right? In a perfect scenario, we recognize early, we patiently accept, and then we create space by doing a short breathing meditation, right? Separating our mind from the anxiety just a little bit, putting it a little further out there, right? That way we have the opportunity to look at it in a different light. Kavita, makes total sense. Great. Okay, so I want to do a meditation now that is specific. It's great for a lot of things. I think one of the things it's the best for is working on this kind of acceptance part, which is usually where we really struggle, right? So this is called a mountain meditation. Have you heard of that? If you've been here, you probably have done it before. But it's one of my favorites, right? I live in Colorado. I love the mountains. So this meditation is kind of like a visualization. Your job is the same as before. We're going to start similar to how we did before. But your job is to just kind of listen to what I'm saying and go along for the ride, right? And do your best to kind of stay focused on the things that we're trying to bring to mind. So I want to do the mountain meditation now. It's a little longer than the one we did earlier, but not too much. But does anyone have any questions on reducing anxiety through acceptance and creating space? Now's your chance to ask all your burning questions. There'll be chances later, so don't feel pressured. Okay. So this is going to start similar, right? Because remember, meditation is a two-step process. 1, we relax our mind with a breathing meditation. 2, we use that relaxed mind to think about something, right? It's called contemplation, fancy, to think about something. In this case, we're gonna think about this mountain meditation, which is a kind of scenic route towards helping ourselves with patient acceptance with our anxiety. Okay, so sit comfortably, just like you were before, unless you weren't comfortable before, in which case now's your opportunity to change. If you're laying down, also fine. Everything's fine. You don't have to change anything. And go ahead and close your eyes. We're going to do a little breathing meditation to relax, and then I'm going to guide us through a mountain meditation. Okay. Let's check in with ourselves. How are you feeling now? Better than before? The same? Worse? Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. All that matters is you notice. Begin to notice how you're feeling in this moment. This is the key step to recognizing your anxiety early on. If you are aware of your own thoughts, you'll be able to catch when you're starting to feel a little anxious. You'll be able to catch the forest fire early, and you'll be able to manage it. So having checked in, you can now turn your full attention once again to your breathing in and out of your nose. Very gently, very naturally. Breathing in and out, following your entire in-breath, following your entire out breath. Feeling the smoothness of your breath in and out as you begin to relax. And if you catch your mind wandering, just gently guide it back. Guide your attention back to enjoying your breath, enjoying sitting here, enjoying breathing in and out through your nose. By engaging with breathing meditation, we may start to notice that we're noticing things about our breath that we hadn't noticed before. Maybe we're noticing how the air feels cool on the tip of our nose each time we breathe in, and how the air feels warmer as we breathe out. Maybe we're noticing for the first time that our whole body moves with each breath. Our shoulders rising and falling, our chest expanding, contracting. You're beginning to notice some little subtle joys about breathing. You're beginning to enjoy breathing itself. How wonderful. How wonderful that we can do this. That we have the ability to choose to focus our mind on our breath and relax. So, having engaged in breathing meditation for a little while, maybe we're feeling a little more relaxed, even slightly, even just a touch more relaxed. We can use our more relaxed state to think about something, to investigate, to contemplate. So today we're going to investigate, contemplate the concept and importance of patient acceptance. So just pay attention to what I'm saying. Just follow along. That's all you have to do. I'd like you to bring to mind the most beautiful mountain you have ever seen. Just imagine it. Is your mountain tall? Wide? Rocky? What does it look like? Just imagine it. And on your mountain, it's summer. The leaves are bright green. The rivers are flowing healthily. Animals are enjoying laying in the grass. Wildflowers sprawled throughout your mountain. Just imagine it. Summer will soon change to fall. The leaves will turn brown. The air becomes much colder on the mountain. Some of the flowers may wilt away. Some of the animals are getting ready to hibernate. The exterior conditions of the mountain have changed from summer. But at the mountain's core, inside at the mountain's core, nothing has changed. It remains the exact same as it was in summer. Fall soon turns to winter, and with winter comes very harsh conditions. Lots of snow, blizzard, wind. All of the leaves are gone. The rivers have frozen. The animals are no longer enjoying the mountain. They are hibernating. The external conditions of the mountain have changed. But at its core, the mountain remains exactly as it was in fall and exactly as it was in summer. Immovable. Winter turns to spring. The snow thaws on your mountain. Life returns. The rivers start flowing. Flowers begin to bloom. The greenery comes back. Animals come out of hibernation. But with spring often comes thunderstorms. And maybe during one thunderstorm, a bolt of lightning hits the side of your mountain, cracking its surface. The external conditions of the mountain have changed. The mountain has weathered. But inside, at its core, the mountain remains unfazed by the lightning strike, unfazed by the snow. It remains exactly as it always has been. We need to be like mountains. We need to begin to realize that although we experience many changes in our external conditions, happy, sad, anxious, excited, worried, jealous, all these things, they are just weather patterns, changing weather on our mountain, changing weather in our mind. At our core, just like the mountain, we remain unchanged. We remain kind, peaceful, calm, reasonable, strong. Those aspects of us, those wonderful qualities, our peacefulness, our ability to be peaceful, to be happy, never goes away. It's always there, waiting for you to access it. That is your core, just like the mountain. So just sit with that for a little while. Imagine yourself as a mountain. Take on the qualities of a mountain. So that way, the next time you find yourself in the throes of anxiety, you will know that at your core, you are calm, peaceful, and happy, and you can access those things. Okay, and when you're ready, you can open your eyes. How was your mountain meditation? Crystal! Crystal! Like, it's super veteran status, Crystal. Oh, the mountain meditation is your favorite? Nice. It's probably mine too. I'm biased to mountains. I love them. So hopefully you found that to be, if nothing else, relaxing. What a marvelous tool. Thank you. Carol, thank you. That's so kind of you. So I kind of explained the analysis. The mountain meditation was awesome. Oh, you liked it? Okay, great. I'm glad, Hilda. So basically, we need to think of ourselves like a mountain, right? The weather's changing outside. We're getting, anxious. We're worried. We're nervous. But that's not us. That's not us, right? At our core, we are peaceful, right? And when we engage in breathing meditation, we get a glimpse at that. We start to see, hey, I can relax myself just by focusing on my breath. Meditation isn't like creating peacefulness, right? It's just showing you what's there already, right? You have this peacefulness within you. It's your core. It's not changing. It's not hidden. It's not like gone, right? You just have to access it. You have to train yourself to be able to access it. Dorothy, good class tonight. Thank you. Shanta, it was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Shanta. It was very, very kind of you to say. Kavitha, that was relaxing. I felt like I had a lot of internal strength during that meditation. I loved that feeling. Yeah, so this is a very good meditation. It's good for a lot of things, right? Positive self-image, all these wonderful things. It's really good for being patient, right? Not jumping into the kind of boat where you're thinking, I am an anxious person, like that's who I am, right? No, you're a peaceful person, right? Your mind is just experiencing some anxious thoughts, right? So there's a different, we're disconnecting that negative link, right? And the mountain meditation is great for empowering us, right? Feeling strong, like we have I feel capable of being able to access this peacefulness. Yes, that is who I am, right? Patricia, it is a new experience. Great. I'm glad. So that's what this is all about. Meditation is all about trying to think about things differently than we might think about them currently, right? I don't know. We probably all the things we talked about today is not something maybe you thought about that much, right? Or, not directly. So that's what we're doing here, right? So if you found this to be enjoyable, I'm glad about that. Come back next week. We do a new topic each week. Magdalena, it was really amazing. Marvelous analogy. I'm a mountain within. Yeah, that's it. That's what you have to think about. Remind yourself that whenever you're kind of moving away from that thought, right? Awesome. Glad you like it. Yeah, I love this one. Beautiful. Come back next week. Normally, I don't know what I'm going to do next week, but I had like a brain blast and I'm like, I know what I'll do. So I think next week we're going to talk about some of the roadblocks that are common when we're trying to get into meditation, right? Some of the things that we come across that might divert us from pursuing meditation and kind of maintaining our effort to practice it, because we have to practice it just like training for a race. We have to train our mind, right? We have to do it like a routine. So I think that's what I'm going to do, but don't hold me to it in case I change my mind. But come back next week. We'll be talking about that or something else new. And if you want, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. Very helpful for me and helpful for you. It lets you know when I'm going live, because we're all really busy and you're not going to be able to remember, oh, it's Wednesday all the time, right? And if you can't make it, like for the live session, which I do think the live sessions are great because you get to ask some questions, right? All these videos are available afterwards. So yeah, if you're so inclined to subscribe, that'd be awesome. And if you are super into this, you're like, hey, I'm liking this, you know? I do one-on-one instruction, right? And that's super helpful for diving into specifics about what you want to work on. This class on Wednesday is general, right? Because everyone's got different things that they want to focus on. But in our one-on-ones, which I do over Zoom generally, we can get very specific, right? So if that's interesting to you, I will put my email in the chat. It's keith@meditationbreaks.com. Just email me. We'll figure out a good scenario time for you. Keith, hold on. I got to focus. Single pointedly concentrating on typing in my email. Hopefully no mistakes. That's my email. Email me anything at any time. I also do corporate events. So if you're like, man, I'm bringing this into work, might not be a bad idea. If nothing else, you just get a little time off work, right? And then your HR person's like, wow, great idea you had of bringing in a meditation instructor. Let me catch up. Kavitha, great class tonight. Excited for next week. Me too. Glad you'll be there. Susanna, thank you so much. Andrew, thank you. Thank you guys for being here. Justin, I had a great one-on-one talking about stress and a focus. Highly recommended. Justin, great to hear from you, my friend. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that you had a good experience. It's just we can really kind of dive into specifics, because look, take anxiety. We all have different things that makes us anxious, right? For me, it's itching. For you, it's probably not itching. Hilda, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for being here. Honestly, I couldn't do this without you guys. This is such a cool community that we've been, everyone's so positive. I love it. Like, I love Wednesdays. I used to not like Wednesdays, and now I love Wednesdays. So thank you for being here, and thank you for taking time out of your busy day to try and learn something new and allow me to teach meditation. I enjoy it very much, and I hope you did too. All right, take care. Be a mountain, and I'll see you next week. All right? Rob, thank you. Take care.